Hi, Ryan Stevens here. Got to play Ryse. Are you guys agreeing with Envy? I'm here with, it's PJ, right?
PJ, yeah.
PJ. What's that short for?
Patrick John.
Oh, it's very classy.
Every time people say Patrick John, I feel like I'm in trouble, so PJ is better.
So we just got to see Ryse, and Ryse has kind of had a tumultuous life. It's been around for years. It was going to be a Connect game. I heard it was going to be a RPG, a first-person game, and now we're given this kind of this brutal kind of brawler. And I'm just curious, how would you kind of define what Ryse is now?
Well, I mean, it's definitely a story-based like action adventure, right? So we kind of set out. We said, well, we want to tell a great story. We want to be a Crytek game that tells a great story. We're going to invest in facial capture. We're going to do like performance capture. We're going to get new tech for like characters and stuff like that. And let's build a combat system around this concept as well. So we had this idea of kind of this close-up brutality. We wanted to be like honest to the warfare of the age, which is sword and shield, right? So cutting off a limb is the easiest way to disable an opponent, rather than having this kind of like Hollywood, I punch you in the face and you punch me, then I punch you. It's like, no, they would just cut off limbs. So yeah, that's how we had kind of ended up in this cinematic, like story-driven kind of feeling combat system.
Now there's a lot of core game fans out there, and they hear the word cinematic as kind of a selling point, and they go, oh, no, I want to hear gameplay. And you guys are going to, by the time this goes up, there's going to be this great dev diary that kind of goes through how the countering system works, how all the executions work. But I'm curious if there's anything in particular you would want to highlight from a gameplay side of things for the game.
I mean, definitely, we said, all right, we're going to tell a great story, but we need to make a great combat game. Okay, and we're new to the space. And so it's like we've never made a third-person action adventure at all at Crytek, and we've also never made a combat game. So when we said, all right, well, we need to make an impact. We need to have something that kind of, sort of makes our place at the table. So for all the people kind of wondering, like, well, what was more important, cinematics and combat? Well, we didn't compromise. We actually, this has been kind of the main struggle in our development is finding that right balance of, beautiful camera with like combat that has depth and has like flow and, requires like timing and just skill to kind of master. And one of the things that we set out early on is like we were really inspired by Akira Kurosawa, like the Seven Samurai, and it's like the way that he shot it just like made combat and combat sequences look beautiful. So when I say cinematic, this was always the kind of thing. It was like, well, we can't compromise on gameplay, but it should be beautiful, right? You should be playing it and going, wow, I don't believe I'm doing that, with my controls. And that kind of always led to this sort of back and forth. It's like, when is it too much control? When is it not enough control? And I think one thing that people will get when they touch it is that actually, Marius feels heavy when you watch videos, but once you actually, touch the controller, his movements are snappy. Like, his deflect, it's like, 1-2 frames, bam, and you like, you deflect an incoming barbarian, axe. So, I mean, the actual feel of the game is top notch. And the combat system definitely has, this depth where you're going to want to play through the game like a couple times before you can really master it. So.
I want to talk about probably kind of the elephant in the room, or the Minotaur in the room. Like, you guys saying, hey, there's a Minotaur, and it's a guy wearing like a helmet. Still looks like a human. But then we were following The Wicker Man, which is a horrible Nicolas Cage movie, but a great classic horror film, the original. Yes, yeah. But they're talking about, we're following the path of Hades and stuff. So the kind of the Roman mythology is actually starting to seep in, as opposed to like, being barbarians and legionnaires and Visigoths and whatnot. Yeah. So I'm curious how much of the mythology, can we expect later on in the game?
Well, I mean, for the most part, the game is fairly realistic. We do touch upon like, kind of the gods' influence like on all of our lives and stuff like that. But the main thing you have to think about is, we said we put ourselves in the age, right? And the Romans culturally were very, very superstitious. And so we said, okay, like, there's a definite like kind of, soldier kind of era-driven like mythology that they kind of create for themselves. So when you go there, the way the soldiers references things like, oh, there are these horned beasts and stuff like that. But when you actually start fighting them and killing them, you realize they're just men. And so we really tried to rally around that concept. But of course, I mean, we pulled the Minotaur from, more Greek mythology, but, the Romans were Hellenistic. So, I mean, they inherited a lot of that stuff.
Let me ask you the generic Xbox One question where I cover all my ground. What's the frame buffer? What are you doing with impulse triggers? And how big is the install?
Okay, so I don't know the last numbers of the install, but I'm pretty sure we're over 35 gigs. But this whole like this fiasco over the kind of 900 P and all this kind of, I mean, honestly, We had the game at 1080, and we looked at it, and we looked at it versus 900. I mean, we're very methodical at Crytek, so when we say we want to do 900, you can bet that it's going to look beautiful, and the difference between 900 and 1080 means we can do graphically more beautiful things because, you know, I think a lot of people forget at the end of the day it's about art. You know, it's about how beautiful the art is, how the lighting looks, how good the particles look. And, you know, whether that's 900 or 1080, it's, you know, it's really more of an artistic choice by Crytek to do the 900. And, you know, the last thing you mentioned is the triggers, right? I mean, like, I mean, it's for me, like the last Xbox 360 controller, you really had this kind of, you know, felt like you're pressing on a spring or something like that. But this one's really smooth. And in fact, we had our execution buttons on our execution on the B button before. But, you know, as we got our hands on kind of the final controllers, like, oh man, this trigger to do an execution, just something that feels really good about that. And then you add this kind of, you know, this haptic feeling rumble, and I mean, it's awesome. And I think anyone that actually gets a hands-on on it would just be like, this definitely feels better than the 360 controller. So,
well, when can we pick up Ryse?
We're day one, man. So, you know, as soon as you get an Xbox One in your local GameStop or whatever, you know, we'll be there.
Awesome. Thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you.
To see more Ryse footage, including stuff you won't see anywhere else, check out GTTV this Thursday, November 7th at 1 a.m. Eastern and Pacific, only on Spike.